Morning, everybody. All right, we'll see all the. I'm going to read through some of the comments here so we can see what we're going to incorporate into it. Okay. Okay. So space seems to be, creating space for ourselves is a big one, and how to gain some power back. And I think that all kind of connects to the same. It all kind of connects to the same concept, which today we're going to focus on. What's your point of contact? So we're going to talk about like more of an emotional contact. Where do you connect with yourself? How do you connect with yourself? And we're going to bring in some of the Jewish teachings into that, and all of that. So let's begin. So we'll begin with our first inhale here. We're going to inhale through the nose, relax the shoulders, soften the eyes, and really begin to connect with yourself here. When you get to the top of that breath, just pause a moment and notice if there is more room or you're just tired. So pause and then inhale some more, just inviting a little bit more breath into that space. And then softly exhale. I'm going to take another 2 rounds of this. Inhale again. You can softly close your eyes if that helps. Notice where your hands are, your fingers are. And then softly exhale. Last one. And really, this is just to get us grounded in our space and grounded in our body more than anything else. And we exhale. Beautiful. So the question really is, what is your point of contact? When we connect with ourselves, when we're trying to tap in on a deeper level, when we're not sure if something belongs to us or somebody else, or if we struggle with making a decision, it's really important to tap into that point of contact and what that might feel like. A few weeks ago, I gave the analogy of the point of contact being similar to like a Where's Waldo situation. Whereas if you open up a Waldo book, which is a book full of activity going on one page, the goal is to find him, to find Waldo. And once you found him, that's it. You know where he is. The next time you look for him, it's easy to spot. So with ourselves, sometimes we really struggle with this point of contact of where are we? What are we? How are we? Right? And when this is a challenge, we struggle with making decisions. So the goal today is to be able to kind of find our own point of contact and familiarize ourselves with our individual space. So yesterday, when we were moving through some of the movements, right, in yin, which was like the restorative practice, as we moved into specific spaces, like we were bending from like a half pigeon, I mentioned to notice the sensations that were going on in the hips. And because we sit in restorative for quite a few minutes, we can really begin to analyze that space on a deeper level, because what we're doing is holding space for that particular time frame, which is stillness. The mind begins to move. Any activity connected to that movement, right, begins to move. So if we have tension trapped in the hip, we will be able to notice it without getting distracted by the next movement, but really allowing ourselves to be still within it. And like a child, when we have undigested emotions in our body that show up as tension, all we need to do is pay attention. So if a child is complaining about something and he doesn't have his mother's full attention, he will act up because all he wants is her attention. He doesn't necessarily need something. He wants her to be present. For anything to digest in our body, it just needs our presence. And it usually needs anywhere between 30 seconds to 90 seconds to digest completely. So when we move into some of these movements, the beauty is that we can stay still in that space, breathe into that space, bring attention to it, and then release, which is digestion. Whatever it is that is there. Sometimes using the word digestion is easier than asking ourselves if we're ready to let go. Noticing that everything passes through us. It's not really healthy for anything to really get stuck. So as we moved through that sensation, the focal point there was, what are you feeling? Like, what is the tension that arises, right, as we bend into that half pigeon? So contacting that sensation and then noticing if we have an automatic, like if the automatic response is a specific emotion. Sometimes we will feel something specific and we connect it automatically to an emotion because we are connected that deep, and we create patterns. But it's always good to challenge the emotions or the story that is connected, because sometimes the story in itself is not necessarily connected to the present. So as we went through that pose, the goal was to really observe, when we feel these sensations, what is connected to it. And this is done a lot in food and experience, with smell and taste. A lot of times, a lot of companies will spend a lot of money formulating a very specific scent to endorse good memories, something that is easy to attach to. And then we gravitate towards it. But what we all do is gravitate towards something familiar. And that is our point of contact. So if we haven't been taught kind of this emotional alignment and how to understand our emotions, or our sensations, what we're feeling, things can be all over the place. So we're just going to work on a simple point of contact today. And this is really in like more of like this was inspired from like some Breslov teachings that I was listening to. And in Breslov, they really focus on meditation. Meditation is a real big, like that's like a starting point for the day. So even before prayer, you have meditation. And before we daven, right, we kind of enter the space of meditation. So a really interesting thing that this Rav brought up was the concept of ratzon. He said, if you want to know, so I'm connecting it to the point of contact, but if you want to know where you're going to go in a day, know what your ratzon is. And your ratzon is like your desire, your need, the things you want in your day. And if we're coming from, again, I'm just going to start in a negative space for a second, but if we're starting in a space where we are struggling to get up in the morning, the first thought that's going to show up in the day is, this is hard, right? Or this is overwhelming. And that can be almost the compass of the day. So when we begin to rewire what we kind of enter the day with, it gives us more of a skeleton for the day. It can give us the route, and we can almost, in certain ways, guarantee what is going to happen. So you can almost predict the day depending on where that sensation is, where your ratzon is in the day. So for a lot of us that struggle with heavy days, and I have them just like everybody else, the greatest thing to do on a day like that is to take the time to sit still and really begin to tap into what are some of the positive things that you want to feel today. Because sometimes you can't, or all the time really, we can't control what happens, right? And that's in the who we are, but we can control where we are. And controlling where we are is controlling the state of mind. More than the word control, I would say condition. So I would say conditioning ourselves to a positive experience where we can think about, like, what is, back to the ratzon itself, like, what do I want today? Like, what do I need today? And really understand what that is. Just like with a healthy meal, it takes time to source the ingredients. It takes time to figure out what it is that you are going to put into your nutritious bank, right? How you're going to do this. So when we start our day, it's so important to know that the compass of where we start is going to really, really affect the quality of the journey. So what is your point of contact? What is that first thing? What is the thing within you that helps create the sense of aliveness within? And that goes back to, like, we started with a couple people asking some questions, like adding some things. So with creating space, right? Creating space, or even trying to take power back, those two things are really strategic, right? So creating space, it takes time to formulate what that space is, right? First, we need to take the time to understand what space do we want to enter, right? And then the second thing is, how do we gain the power back? The power in itself is is really when we have the space, we can kind of enter into that space when we're familiar with ourselves. So a lot of time when we do feel powerless, it's just that we don't know ourselves well enough. And the concept of power in itself is not necessarily having authority over anybody else, but being familiar with your inner space. So, back to letting go and making space, that's really taking the time to digest emotionally so that you could know what that point of contact is within. Where is that place that you operate best from? For a lot, so back to like getting up in the morning and struggling. When we have a day that we struggle, we have to ask ourselves, okay, what, first of all, what might have contributed to the struggle? What is something that might have added? And that could be eating healthier, right? So like a lot of times, like sugar or carbs, gluten and stuff like that, um, can help with fatigue. So, and then the quality of sleep. So it's really important to make sure that how you're going to bed and what condition you are then will affect how you feel in the morning. So it's really just identifying some of the struggles, and that could even be having a deep conversation or a negative conversation that just doesn't make you feel settled within. Also, it's really what we're observing. Nowadays there's a lot going on if it comes to politics and social media, and there's a lot of exposure to other people's lives. So what ends up happening is, for a lot of people, they're using somebody else's life as a host for their own, where we're not even sure what we're actually feeling, where some of the sensations that we are living, because there's so much exposure, and this could even be to the people around us, that we start feeling things that really belong to somebody else. So the best way to come back and find Waldo, or your point of contact within, would be to really take that time in the morning to be still and intentional, really. And that's really where the word kavana comes into place. Because, and kavana is concentration, right? It's a focus. Kivun, which is in the same shoresh, right? It has the same root word, um, is the same word for route, right? So it's your direction. So understanding that it's so much of what happens in our day begins with our point of contact, where we begin. Where we begin is everything. So it's where are you more than who are you, right? So when we so when we do feel these sensations, right? So if we're sitting still and we are experiencing some kind of sensation, I've talked about this in the past, of having the sensation and then the emotion that might be connected, which is the story, which is like almost like a secondary part, right? So there's the first thing, which is, for example, the example I give is hitting an elbow into a wall and saying, ouch. That is the sensation. The emotion that might be attached to that is, I'm so clumsy, or the story that we create. What we're trying to do is when we explore where we're coming from, or when we explore the rut zone of where we want to go, right? Their starting point and the point of contact. We want to focus on the sensation and detach some of the emotion, knowing that that emotion might be related to something else, and notice if we can free ourselves from that, allowing sensation to digest in itself rather than having all these emotions that kind of piggyback off of it. And the thing that happens is that the mind is like Velcro, so anything will stick. So when we take the time to sit back, breathe into our body, and really focus on, okay, what is it that I want? Where is it that I want to be? And things will come up and you just allow it to kind of move around. It kind of works like a prison, right? So once your mind begins to understand the confines of the space where you're not going anywhere, you're going to be staying still, it begins to relax, and then it begins to repair the nervous system. But we have to give it time. Like I say always, it's like opening windows in the morning. If you get up and there are no windows opened, the house could be stuffy and you won't notice it until you go outside and come back in. And then we open windows. And so as we move through our day, it's very important to notice that if the starting point, at the start we open the windows. At the start, we're able to identify between what belongs to us and what belongs to somebody else. It can really help give us that clarity. It sets the tone for the day. And what this does is where power really comes into this is an inside contact. This is an inner focus. So the focus more than anything else becomes from an internal space where we become familiar with ourselves on a deeper level, on an inner sphere, which is like the sensation and the emotion and the energy from within, removing some of the outside kind of draws back to flavor or smell. A lot of times these when things are enticing from the outside, they draw us in so quickly and they kind of almost hijack our sensations. But when we are familiar with ourselves in that space, what ends up happening is we're able to differentiate what belongs to us and what doesn't. So as you move through the end of the week and you begin to digest into Shabbos and everything else, just take the time to allow yourselves to get familiar with your personal point of contact, which is connected to where you want to be rather than who you want to be. And we can all go deeper from there. So thank you so much for joining me here on this journey. And thank you for joining us as a group, because everybody's support matters. And I wouldn't be able to do this without all of you here. So good luck on that journey. Amazing. I'm just going to read, let me read here because I know that there's a couple comments. I don't know. Has anyone else had some trouble with the connection? I'm not sure. Has anyone else had trouble with the connection?